Okay, whenever you're ready, go.
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, everyone. Today we're going to learn how to make a wonderful meal for yourself, your significant other, your children if you really want to spoil them. But there's nothing to me that takes the cake better than a fine, fine slab of grade A beef. So you can't go wrong. There's several different options that you can choose from when you go to your local store. So you have everything from tenderloin and up. You would have ribeye, you would have your porterhouse, you would have, in this case I bought an enormous tomahawk steak, which is essentially just a bigger version of a ribeye with a much bigger bone in. So, when you're picking out your meat, any good butcher will tell you you want to try to find a fine marbling. I don't have the example here today because it's already cooked. But you want to look for a nice fine marbling. You want to look for a meat that's not falling apart. You want it to be nice and dense, a solid, nice piece. So, after you pick out your meat, you're going to start your preparation process. Now, you only need 2 of these ingredients for sure, I would say. You don't have to get seasoned salt, but I would say you need salt and pepper. Those 2 are like husband and wife, they go everywhere, right? And not everything. So, besides that, I particularly like onion powder and garlic powder to go with it. Make sure you get the powder, otherwise you are going to be double or tripling up your salt. So do not use garlic salt or onion salt is a common mistake. You will end up tripling or quadrupling up your salt intake, which can destroy your whole entire process. So, when you are preparing your meat, what you're going to do is you're going to lay it out flat. You're going to take your oil. I would suggest a higher scorch point oil, so I would stay away from olive oil unless you really know what you're doing. I tend to never use it because I do a searing method, so that's a high temp. So you would want an oil more like a canola, a vegetable, etc. Take your pick. What you're going to do is you're going to gently apply the oil over your entire meat, just not a lot, just a coating. What this acts as is both a bonding agent for the seasonings that I had mentioned earlier, and on top of that, it keeps your meat from sticking and getting stuck onto your grill, so you're not ripping pieces of your meat as you transition it into its different sections, or as you maneuver it around your heat. That's the last thing you want. I don't know if you've ever gotten meat stuck to a pan, or if you've ever gotten it stuck on anything. It's not fun to clean up, and it causes a big mess. So, once you have your meat all set up, ready to go, you have it oiled, you're going to be very generous. Not light, you're going to be very generous with your seasonings. A full coating on both sides with all 4. So salt, pepper for sure, optional of garlic and onion. Like I said, you want to be very generous, make sure the whole thing is fully covered, both sides. Then your next step is going to be, you have options here. You don't have to do this. You can either just let it sit until it comes up to a room temperature, or what I like to do is I put my oven at a very low heat, so like around 200, 250, where you're not actually cooking it. Your goal here is what you're trying to sweat the meat. You're getting that big meat, all its juices flowing. And obviously some meat is bigger than others, all right? So the bigger the meat, the longer you got to let it sit in there, let all those juices start to sweat and have it absorb all the seasonings. Now, once you have started that process, you're going to preheat your what you're actually going to cook it on, whether it be your pan, barbecue, etc. So what you're going to do is you're going to get whatever it is that you're going to place this on, ripping hot. On high, 500 degrees, however you want to say it, but it's got to be ripping hot. Because what you're going for here is to now take those juices that you've got all soaking in, and you're going to sear both sides. You're going to completely sear it, creating a case for those juices to sit in. So you don't want it to be slow, you want it to be fast acting. Now, so as it's sitting in the oven, you're going to go start preheating. As that preheats, you're going to cycle this once. So you're going to let it sit in your oven for about 2 to 3 minutes. Flip it onto the other side, make sure the opposite side gets just as much. So once you have that done, you're going to place your meat onto your barbecue or your pan. But essentially what you're going for here is you want a nice even cook on both sides. So the technique that I use is called the cross pattern. So you're going to place your meat at a 45, let it sit for 2 to 3 minutes. In this case, it was a much larger piece of meat. You're going to let it sit for more like 4 to 5. Then you transition it to the opposite 45 to get that nice cross cut that gives you the nice even cooking on the one side. We'll do the exact same for the opposite side. Again, notice the nice cross pattern that I have worked in here to establish a nice even cook. With how thick this meat is, I actually just slop it on every single side. So I will actually physically rotate this all along during the entire process to try to establish a nice even cook throughout. After you have seared, this doesn't take very long. Standard issue steak is an inch thick. This is obviously much bigger. So this should not be more than at most a 10-minute process, because I don't think you should eat steak beyond medium, right? This is the personal opinion of mine. If anybody wants it beyond that, you ask them politely but firmly to leave. So, once you have your steak nice and seared, it's ready to come off. Upon it being fully cooked the way that you want it, don't touch it yet. So what you're going to do now is I like to use a nice homemade garlic butter. So I crush up garlic cloves, put them in the butter, heat them up together to let them meld really nice together. So once you have that all melded together, again, you're going to take your brush and you're going to distribute it evenly across the entire piece of meat here. Once it's fully distributed, you let it sit for about 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, let it sit. What this is going to do, have you ever cut into a piece of meat and seen that just big puddle of blood or juice come out of the bottom? So what you've now done is you've taken your juices out of the meat itself. You've let it, if you cut it too early, it's all going to dump out. And so now you're going to have a much drier piece instead of having a nice juicy succulent bite with each one. So you want to try to retain as much of that moisture as you can. Once you've let it sit for just a few minutes, let it cool off just a little bit, unfortunately. But once you let it cool off a little bit, it's now ready to be shared, whether you're having it all yourself on a nice evening in, or whether you're trying to provide a nice experience for family, for friends, or whether you're doing a presentation here at Gateway. You now have a nice, excellent meal that's pretty straightforward and simple, as long as you meet your time increments. You can use things such as songs, like if you know a song's 3 minutes, 4 minutes, you know that at the end of that song it's time to transition. Or if you smoke, or if you whatever, it's all going to take about whatever takes your time increment. If you don't want to use meat thermometers, if you don't want to have a big clock in front of you, use something else to supplement that. But at this point, that would be the end of how you prepare a wonderful steak. So at this point, I would like to hand out samples, if anyone is interested. And always have a big one. Don't tell anybody about it.
It's okay.